We're starting a new series today, Without a King. It's from the book of Judges. So the time of the Judges is the period after Joshua and before the monarchy. So before there's a king. And it's just a time of chaos. It's like the Wild West. And this is how it's summarized in the book of Judges, is that in those days Israel had no king. And all the people did whatever seemed right in their own eyes. Okay, so there's this cycle that repeats itself ad nauseum in the book of Judges. It begins with the nation falling into idolatry. And then God withdraws his protection. And then they fall into domination by a surrounding nation. And then they're in their intense pain. They cry out to God for mercy. And then he answers. And he delivers them by raising up a judge for a specific purpose, the liberation of the nation. So today we're going to reflect on one of the last of the judges, and his name is Samson. All right, it's a weird story, I'm going to tell you. I forgot how weird it was. So Samson's story is told in Judges chapters 13 through 16. So we're going to cover some ground today. Now, what is the title of this message, you may ask? And I'm so glad that you did. Because as you know, Pastor Jim likes to make fun of my long titles. And Pastor Jim is not here today. And when the cat's away, the mice will play. So he's probably watching though, right? So brother, you ain't seen nothing yet. This is what I got to say to you. Because this entire sermon is just a series of sermon titles. Here's the problem. I had all these titles, in my head, and they're all great. So I just decided I'll use them all. And the first title is this: Samson, Superman, in dreadlocks. Okay, I don't know if you know, but he had dreadlocks. In fact, he had 7 dreadlocks. So he never cut his hair. He had to be like a fearsome looking character. But he comes from this very sweet mom and dad. Their faith, his mom and dad's faith, is so remarkable that the entire chapter of Judges 13 is dedicated to them. And it starts this way. The angel of the Lord appeared to his mom and said, "You are barren and childless, but you are going to become pregnant and give birth to a son." This is one of God's favorite tricks, to bring life from lifelessness. And so the parents are they know it's an angel, and they're just awestruck by what's happening. And so they want to know, so they ask specifically, hey, are there any instructions that you need to give us in terms of raising this son? And this is what they said: you'll have a son whose head is never to be touched by a razor, because the boy is to be a Nazarite, dedicated to God from the womb. He will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines. So what you see here is that Samson was born for a purpose. Samson was born for battle. Now, interestingly enough, after this exchange, the dad asked the angel, he said, "What's your name?" And the angel says this: "Why do you ask my name? It is beyond understanding." Which I love, I'll just have to say, because God is beyond understanding. And everything he does, his ways are above our ways. But here's the spoiler alert. I know his name. His name was Jesus. This is a Christophany. And mom and dad find out in short order that it is the Lord himself. So what they do is, in gratitude, they want to give an offering. And so they build this offering, Judges 13, 20 and 22. And the fire blazed up from the altar towards heaven. And the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame. And seeing this, Manoah, that's his dad, and his wife fell with their faces to the ground. "We are doomed to die," he said to his wife. "We have seen God." Very interesting. So this is how Superman comes into the world. This Superman, just like Clark Kent, has a kryptonite problem. And he's got this one big fatal flaw. Without his hair, he's just like any other man. But as you read the story, you realize hairlessness is not his big problem. He's got a bigger sense of kryptonite, and it's women. Like, I hate to say it, but he's a womanizer. Which led me to my second sermon title. Now, I have to tell you, I had to kick this one around for a while. But it started out this way. Broken picker. Because he just loved bad girls. He just did. But that broken picker, I threw that one away, and I morphed it into the secret lives of Philistine wives. But I realized the Mormons already took that one. So I went ahead and I landed on this one for the second title, Fatal Attraction. So fatal attraction didn't happen just once in Samson's life. It happened twice. Right? So you could say that he was unlucky in love, but honestly, he was just a little dense. I mean, he fit well into the completely unfair, but true in this case, stereotype of the academically challenged athlete, otherwise known as the dumb jock, because love makes him stupid. But, you know, love can do that. I mean, love can make you do crazy things. So my first fatal attraction was in 4th grade. Her name was Claire Valans. She got me on field day. She was the fastest girl, in fact, the fastest girl or boy in the school on that day. And I watched her run, and I was smitten, man. So a few days later, I'm in the back of the class, and the boys are passing notes about the girls, and they're coming through me, and I switched teams. I got on Team Claire that day, and I took the notes from the boys about the girls, and I gave them to the girls. It was a bold move. Beatings were threatened for the rest of that day. But when the final bell rang, I surreptitiously went out the front of the building, not the back where I always went out. And then I made my way quietly along the edge of the building behind the bushes, but it didn't matter because the spies were everywhere. And like they swarmed me like bees. And then I ran as fast as I could, and I got as far as the creek. And with my back to the creek, there was about a dozen boys. Me and the dirty dozen. With me there, 12 there, and it was a stare down. And that's when my best friend stepped out of the crowd, and he said, well, then I'm on Robin's side. And he came and he stood beside me. And then one by one, every one of them came and stood on my side until they were all on my side. And then my best friend looked over and he said, well, then I'm going back on the other side. So he went back to the other side, and then Henry Reynolds pushed me in the creek. I cried and went home. All for love. All for Claire Valans. Love made me stupid. You know, it done, and it can do that, and it did that for Samson, and that's for sure. We're not told the name of his first fatal attraction, but you know well the name of his second fatal attraction. Her name was Delilah. But the story starts this way. This is Judges 14:1. It says, Samson went down to Timnah, and there saw a young Philistine woman. And when he returned, he said to his father and mother, I've seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. Okay. He comes home. I've met a girl, he announces. Well, I haven't actually met her, but I've seen her, and she's hot. Because that's all he's got to go on at this point. Go get her for me, he commands. And they, of course, they try to talk him out of it. But, you know, you get the feeling pretty quick that there is no talking him out of it, because this is what happens next. His parents object. His father and mother reply, is there not an acceptable woman among your relatives or among all our people? Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get a wife? But Samson said to his father, get her for me. She's the right one for me. Okay, he's got to be a teenager right here. I mean, I'm not picking on teenagers because I'm just saying, this is me. I was like that when I was a teenager. I thought I knew what was best, and I was certain about it. Now, the reason that his parents objected is because it's a blatant violation of Mosaic law. Moses said in Deuteronomy 7, 1 and 3, when the Lord God brings you into the land, do not intermarry. Okay, this is one of those places where the story takes a kind of a weird twist. Gets a little weirder because the oddly comforting truth behind Samson's choice of wife is interjected parenthetically by the author. This is what we're told in 4:14. The author just needs to, he needs to let us know. His parents did not know that this was from the Lord, who was seeking an occasion to confront the Philistines for at that time they were ruling over Israel. So, okay, this, I'm just going to say, played with my head for a little bit. I mean, I really had to think about it. Okay, so here was my thought process. God created Samson to fulfill a specific purpose, right? Same for you. Same for me. We're told we were created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. But here's the wrinkle. When God preordained Samson for his assignment, he knew Samson's weaknesses and factored them in the fulfillment of the assignment. Which it blows my mind. Now, I have weaknesses. I wish that I didn't, but I do. And you do. We all do. Right? We all have our kryptonite too, by the way. Right? You have your thing. You get triggered, right? Something. You get this weird thing that happens and it just takes you, it burns you down to the ground. It sets you off. God knows that. He still calls you. You're still called to a purpose, even though you're a flawed human being. And he plans to use you. So when you say yes to him and you start serving him, and then suddenly wow, you go off the rails. God's not like, I didn't see that coming. No, he did. He knew that it was coming, and he called you anyway, and he plans to use not just your strengths, but your weaknesses in the fulfillment of your purpose, which is crazy to me. Now, I'm not saying, well, roll around in the mud like a pig at that point and, relish your weaknesses, because I'll be the first to say it. We'll see this later. His weaknesses hurt him immensely, and yet God used them. So here's how that unfolds in the story of the life of Samson. 14, 5 and 6. So Samson went down to Timnah together with his father and his mother. And as they approached the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion came roaring toward him. And the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, so that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands, as he might have torn a young goat. All right, so this is that moment when his superhuman strength surfaces. But he keeps it a secret. His mom and dad weren't there for the event. He doesn't even tell them. And so he has this moment with this lion, and then he goes on. He gets back with his parents, and they go in, and then he meets his heartthrob. He really likes her. I'm pretty sure she had him at hello. The conversation is so good, it ends in a proposal. She says yes. The wedding is on. Samson goes back home as wedding preparations are made. And when the time for the wedding comes, he goes back to Timnah. But on the way back, he remembers the lion, and so he sneaks off to look at the lion. And he sees the dead carcass, right? But there's a bunch of bees have made a hive inside the dead carcass of the lion. And there's a bunch of honey in the lion. And so he scoops some out, which is super gross, and eats it. And then he's got enough. He goes back, he finds his parents. He gives them some honey too. But he doesn't tell them where it came from. You're welcome. So then the residents of Timnah, he gets there. The elders of the city have planned a big party, and they've chosen 30 groomsmen to stand with him. And so the marriage feast is beginning, and Samson is sort of feeling the oats of his invincibility. And so he picks a fight. This is in 12 and 13. He says, let me tell you a riddle. And if you can give me the answer within the 7 days of the feast, I'll give you 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes. But if you can't tell me the answer, you must give me 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes. Okay, so this is like a high stakes gamble for Samson, right? Because if they lose, each one of the 30, they're out one set of clothes, which would be painful, but not horrible. If Samson loses, he's out 30 sets of clothes, which is a small fortune. So they like the odds on the bet. So they take him up on the bet. And then here's the riddle. Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet, right? Obviously referring to the lion. And of course, nobody can figure it out. They can't, they're not even close. And they're facing the pressure of the loss. And so they go to Samson's new wife. And they start to pressure her. And it's more than pressure. They blackmail her. In fact, it's really straight up a death threat. They say, coax your husband into explaining the riddle for us, or we will burn you and your father's household to death. And then that's not an empty threat. And so then what happened? Then Samson's wife threw herself on him, sobbing, you hate me. You don't love me. You giving my people a riddle, but you haven't even told me the answer. And this is how Samson responds. He says, I haven't even explained it to my father and mother. So why should I explain it to you? She cried the whole 7 days of the feast. And so on the seventh day, isn't that fun? That'd be a fun marriage weekend. Wah! Oh boy. On the seventh day, he finally told her. All right, she's in fear of her life. They're going to burn her to death, and her father, and her family. And so she immediately spills the beans. And then they guess the answer. And then Samson immediately understands that she ratted him out. And he says this, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle. Okay. I'm just saying, like, I don't know if that was rude then, but I'm saying, don't call your wife a cow. You pudding pop, that works. So, honey, baby cakes, anything's fine, but not come here, my little heifer. It's just not the thing to do. But that's what he says, and then he storms off because he knows he's sunk. And he goes down to Ashkelon. He's really mad. And he strikes down 30 of their men, strips them of everything, gave their clothes to those who had explained the riddle, and burning with anger, he returned to his father's home. But Samson, he goes home, he cools down, he's got like a chance to process it all. And so when he cools off, he thinks it again, and it says later on, at the time of the wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat and went to visit his wife. All right, so maybe he found out the truth. I don't know. But he decided, no, I want to be with her anyway. So he gets like a bouquet of fresh flowers, like in the form of a young goat, and takes them, and he goes and visits his wife. Just one little problem surfaces when he gets there. He finds out that his father has given his wife in marriage to one of Samson's former groomsmen. So I'm just saying that when the best man runs off with the bride, it's never going to be a pretty situation. So the father tries to explain to him. He says, I was so sure you hated her that I gave her to your companion. Isn't her younger sister more attractive? Take her instead. But Samson's just, at this point, he's just so mad that he can't take it, which is my third title, Revenge Squared. I realize it should be revenge with a little 2 at the top, but I couldn't make it happen on my computer, so you get it. Revenge Squared. The story of Samson is the story of an ever-escalating revenge. I mean, from beginning to end. Like, it is payback time. And he knows that he says, this time I have a right to get even with the Philistines. I will really harm them. So he comes up with a pretty clever plan. He went out and caught 300 foxes. Now, the word for fox is the same word for jackal. So it could have been 300 jackals, could have been 300 foxes, but this is a large commitment of Tom. That's all I'm saying. He's all in. He catches 300 foxes, ties them tail to tail in pairs, and then he fastened a torch to every pair of tails, lit the torches, and let the foxes loose in the standing grain. All right, so you get the picture? He gets the animals, he ties their tails together. That way they can't run off, like they're running in circles or they're running erratically. And then he puts a lit torch. So he's got 150 pairs of animals, 150 lit torches, which represents 150 fields of standing grain that are burnt to the ground. It is a shock and awe campaign. Now, just by the way, for this, Samson's former wife and father-in-law were burned to death anyway. But and then this is another reason for Samson to get revenge. Again and again and again, many are slaughtered. And so after this period of battle, he goes and he hides and rests and regroups in a cave. And the Philistines, they can't find him. But the residents of Israel, what happened? The Philistines are gathering in mass, right? And the residents of Israel are freaking out. They know where Samson is. So this is what it says. 15:11. 3,000 men from Judah went down to the cave in the rock of Edom and said to Samson, don't you realize that the Philistines are rulers over us? What have you done? Okay, this brings me to my fourth sermon title, which is the tragedy of giftedness unsupported by character or vision. This moment in Samson's life is without a doubt his best opportunity to do something that's really important. He's got 3,000 men. He has the chance to raise them up by faith to fight. Right? These 3,000 fighters, if he could have put a trust in God in them so that they would step out and fight, that would have jogged the conscience of the nation. All of God's people would have risen up. See, Samson was called to set a nation free. That was the purpose for which he was born. But he didn't have a national vision because he couldn't get past himself. He couldn't get past his honor, being hurt, his hurts, his need for vengeance. And like he's just a lone wolf. What if in that moment he had been captured by a calling larger than himself and said to these men, what are you talking about? We're at war. You're warriors. Rise up. Trust God. But he doesn't. He doesn't call them to faith. What he does is he thinks about it and he says, I'm going to leverage this situation to get what? Revenge. I can get a greater vengeance. So they say to him, look, we've come, we're going to tie you up, we're going to hand you over to the Philistines. And so he just kind of goes along with the charade because he's got a plan. And he says, fine. So they tie him up and they take him to the Philistines. And when he gets in their presence, he shreds the rope that binds him. He finds the jaw of a donkey and he kills 1,000 of them by himself. And then he makes up a little ditty because he loved his little ditties. And the ditty is this: with a donkey's jawbone, I have made donkeys of them. And even if that event was short-sighted and could have been so much more, everybody watched what he did, slaying 1,000 men himself with the jawbone of a donkey. And that's what made him judge. And Samson led Israel for 20 years in the days of the Philistines. And so all is well for a lot of years. And then, the story has personal exploits about what he did with his incredible strength. But all of this comes to an end when he gets to his second fatal attraction in 16:4. Sometime later, he fell in love. Here comes the stupid with a woman in the valley of Sorek whose name was Delilah. So the rulers of the Philistines, they go to Delilah and said, see if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength. So his second great love really didn't have, her affections were insincere, unlike his first wife. So they go to her and they say, look, we're going to give you 1,100 shekels of silver each. Okay, what you learn in Judges 3:3, there's 5 Philistine rulers. So that's 5,500 shekels of silver, which if you would translate in today's currency, some estimate it to be a modern U.S. equivalent of $15 million. Okay, it's a boatload of money. And she sees this and she's like, yeah, I'll take the money. So that shows you how important Samson's capture is to them. And now he's making it easy because once again, he's sleeping with the enemy. And so Delilah, she starts working on him and she whines and she nags and she pleads and she winks and she snuggles her way to an answer. All the while, there's Philistine soldiers hiding in the bedroom closet. A little awkward. And so 3 times Samson says, hey, okay, I'll tell you. If you tie me up with fresh bowstrings that have never been used, I'm as weak as any other man. And then she wakes him from his sleep. The Philistines are upon us. Bust. He rips them apart. He says, okay, I'm going to tell you the truth this time. 7 new ropes. If you just tie me with 7 ropes that have never been used, I'm as weak as any other man. Bust. The third one. Okay, this is truly weird. If you weave the 7 braids of my hair into fabric, I'll become as weak as any other man. So he falls asleep, and she weaves his 7 braids of hair into fabric, which is, I don't even know how you do that. All I can say, dude, is the guy was a heavy sleeper. I'm just saying, how does that happen? And then she's like, the Philistines are upon us, and he wakes up and bust. And so this, you get to Judges 16:6, and she's just like, how can you say you love me? You won't even confide in me. It's the 3rd time you've made a fool of me. You haven't even given me the secret of your great strength. And with such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick of it. Does this sound familiar? That's what I'm saying. He just wasn't like the sharpest tool in the shed. So he caves in 16:17, and he tells her everything. No razor has ever been used on my head because I've been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. And if my head were shaved, my strength would leave me and I would become as weak as any other man. And Delilah immediately gives up the goods and collects the rewards, and the consequences are tragic for Samson. Then the Philistines seize him. They gouge out his eyes. They took him down to Gaza. They bind him in bronze shackles, and they set him to grinding grain in the prison. He thought he was invincible in his pride. But here's the truth, true for us. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. And he's reaping what he sowed. It's true for Samson. It's true for me. It's true for you. Samson's hit rock bottom. But rock bottom isn't the end of his story because God puts him in a situation where he's got a lot of time to think. I mean, he's just grinding grain in a prison. And over that time, he begins to repent. And slowly he returns to faith. And a symbol of that fact is that his hair starts growing back, which nobody seems to notice. And this brings me to my last sermon title, The Powerful Prayers of the Humbled. Amazing grace. So here's the thing. Sometimes we make incredibly stupid choices. And humiliation is the result. But the result of humiliation can be humility. We get humiliated and we think that God has disqualified us because we don't deserve him. He shouldn't answer our prayers, right? But when we get back to the place of humility, it doesn't matter what we've done. When we get back to that place of humility, we are fully qualified before him. And so he prays this humble prayer. And then he finally, again, fulfills the purpose for which he was created. And it's this. It's festival time. There's this big festival to the god called Dagon. And everybody who's anybody's in there. And so they come and then they take in Samson. He has his eyes, he's blind, right? And they put him between two pillars. And he feels the two pillars, one on his right, one on his left. And he says this prayer. He prays to the Lord. Sovereign God, remember me. Strengthen me just once more. And let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my two eyes. And don't you wish, there's still a lot of I, me, my in this prayer. And he never gets past, I just want revenge. It's never like, oh, God's honor. Like, let's show them who you are, Lord. No, he's just like, I want revenge. They blinded me. But you know what? That's not an awesome prayer, but there's an awesome answer to the prayer. And God fills him with supernatural strength. And so here's my 2 takeaways. These are quick. Number 1, it's never too late. I'm just telling you, it's true for Samson, true for you, it's never too late to do the right thing. It's never too late to live by faith. It's never too late to be used by God in a powerful way. You say yes to him. I don't care what's happened prior to this moment. You say yes to him. You trust him. He's ready to use you. And the reason behind that is there's just no end. There's no bottom to his amazing grace. There's no way to exhaust his mercy. And the thing that, I mean, if you could look at my life from beginning to end, I have one outstanding characteristic. I'm a trophy of grace. I mean, that is my story from beginning to end. All right, here's the second takeaway, is the character matters. And so I just would say, what is it in you? You can see the tragic consequences in Samson's life of the fact that he never dealt with the fact that he had this fatal flaw, this fatal weakness. And we all have these sins, man, that we just struggle with. We don't know how to get over. And then we just get used to them and we're comfortable and we live our life. But they're killing us. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. A man reaps what he sows. So please be kind to yourself and deal with it. Own it. Share it with somebody. Repent. It's never too late. You don't got to be like Samson. You know, as stupid as he was, he makes the Hall of Fame of Faith in Hebrews 11. You can too.